So I've wanted to do a video for quite some time now about judgment, but it's been quite, I wouldn't say difficult, but when I'm doing my videos I don't script them, I don't sort of create a framework of what I'm going to do. Something comes into my consciousness, usually from something I've experienced in my actual everyday life, and that's when the videos come, and I have a message that I want to share that I think is going to help inspire someone, motivate someone, lift somebody, connect them back to their authentic true self, which is the journey that I am on, and that, you know, we are on as humanity. We're on that journey of connecting to the true self, back to the true self, because we have been disconnected from that for a long time. And so we are all on that journey, whether we are aware of that, and we'll all be at different levels of consciousness about that journey that we're all on. You know, really that longing inside is a longing for self, for connection to God source consciousness, back to our divinity. So I've been wanting to do this video for ages, but it's just not really seemed to have come out about judgment, you know, probably because I was judging myself about this judgment video, and that's why I want to talk about judgment, because, you know, during 2020, what it massively highlighted to me, amongst many things, I used to think I was a person who was non-judgmental. I used to pride myself on that. I used to think, you know, I don't judge people, I'm non-judgmental, I'm live and let live. That was who I had a perception of who I was. And then when 2020 hit, boy, did I become judgmental. And that's what 2020 was about. It was about bringing everything that we'd repressed into the shadows, into the light, because it needs to come into the light. It needs to be seen, it needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be accepted in order for it to be dissolved by the light. Otherwise that darkness remains and it distorts our reality. So we saw that collectively in the collective consciousness. You could look out and see collectively all of those shadows were coming into light. We were seeing the true darkness that had been controlling, mind controlling our reality and our lives, you know, leading our behaviour. And that was a representation of what was going on inside all of us, all those shadows that would repress, which we were then seeing. So 2020 brought judgment right in front of my face, and actually what it showed me was that thing that I thought I was not, you know, that thing that I couldn't accept in myself, was that I was judgmental. I did judge. I didn't judge people when they were going and doing their own thing and it wasn't affecting me, but when in 2020, where I felt like people's choices to go along with the narrative was affecting me, and that brought out all these sides of judgment where, you know, people that were close to me, that, and we'll have all have experienced this, that we had a complete split of consciousness during that time, where some family members would have been bought into the narrative and some of us would have not been bought into the narrative, and that created a lot of conflict, and for me a lot of judgment as well, where I found myself judging people for not believing what I believed, for not being on the same page as where I was. And why do we do that? Why do we judge? And I'm so glad that that came up for me, because it's come up for me so that I can start to heal that, because judgment is one of the things that we do that really keeps us trapped, keeps our consciousness from stabilizing in higher consciousness levels. Because when we are in judgment, we are resisting, we're in resistance to something, we're seeing it as being bad, we're judging it, and when we judge something, it gets stuck to us, right? We cannot dissolve it, we cannot alchemize it from lead to gold, sort of speak, and it becomes something that potentially gets stuck in the shadows and is affecting us from actually stepping fully into our authenticity. And when it comes to judgment, you know, we all do this. We all judge people, and often we are unconscious to the fact that we are judging people, but often, not always. So please don't take this as always, but often when we're judging something in someone else, it's actually from a fear inside of us. So as an example to that, obviously there's a new agenda at foot with the it's hotter than hot agenda, be afraid of the sun agenda that's out there, the BS on the news, and one of my friends actually basically was buying into it, and I snapped. I wasn't, I reacted in a way where I really judged her, and I put her down, not like directly, but with my tone, with how I said it. I was very cutting with my response when I realised she was buying into that agenda. I was judging her. But why was I judging her? Do you know what? I came aware of it, and I explained to her why I reacted like that, and actually it wasn't about her, it was about me. It was about my fear, because I judged her because I went into fear. I went into fear that, oh my God, someone around me, because I was thinking, no one's going to fall for this. Nobody's going to fall for this. And I was thinking, do you know what? I've come to the realisation we all get to choose. We have free will, and we can choose the reality that we want to live in. And if we want to live in that fear, that's our choice. And I thought, I've come to acceptance with that, non-judgment of that, understanding that everyone's at a different consciousness level, and that's okay, because I've been in that consciousness before as well, where I didn't realise where I was stuck in fears. In 2020 I went into fears, but on the other side of the coin, but because it was someone close to me, it put me into fear that, oh my God, if someone close to me who knows the 2020 stuff was a scam is buying this, God, is humanity going to buy into it again? And I went into fear, and fear takes us into judgment. So when we are judging, we're in fear, and we are locking ourselves in to a lower state of consciousness, and we're harming ourselves actually. That's what judgment does really. It really harms the self and stops us from fully stepping into our authenticity. So when it comes to this, I guess one of the points of this video is that when it comes to judgment, it's about us acknowledging and seeing those aspects of the self that we don't feel comfortable with, that we don't feel comfortable with. I don't feel comfortable with the aspect of judgment, the fact that I judge people through my own fears. I haven't felt comfortable with that. It's been in the shadow. 2020 has brought it out of the shadow. Now I'm starting to see it, I'm starting to recognise, I'm starting to become aware, conscious of a subconscious program that was buried inside of me, that was directing my life and my behaviour in certain ways, not always obvious ways. Because when we're stuck in a subconscious program, we don't see it, we are not aware of it. That's why it's called subconscious. And that's why we go through difficult events, to bring them into the consciousness so we can acknowledge these parts of us. So we acknowledge the judgment, and I know we all have judgment because we are programmed from birth to judge one another, to be in competition with one another, to judge people if they don't follow the same, if they don't fall into line with the status quo that we are programmed into. So it's everywhere. We will hear our parents judging everybody for their decisions, neighbours, friends, colleagues, not because they're bad, but because they've also been infected with that program, or that program's been inserted into the consciousness, in the collective consciousness. You look at the media, you look at TV, it's judgment, judgment, judgment. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You're too fat, you're too thin, you've got cellulite, you haven't got, your boobs are too big, your boobs are too small. It's just judgment, judgment, judgment. So, it's in the collective consciousness. But now we can hold it into the light, we can bring it into our awareness, and that's what we do. We bring things out of the shadow, we bring it into our awareness, and if we bring it in to our awareness, then we can start to dissolve those aspects. And it's not like so to dissolve it, we've got to not judge the judgment. We're not to judge ourselves for judging ourselves and others, right? We've got to see that it is a program. We've got to look at it with compassion, with acceptance. We accept it is what is. We don't deny it, we don't repress it, we don't push it away, because that puts it back into the shadow. And you'll notice that if you walk and you see the sun and you see your shadow's never ever going to leave you. You can never get away from your shadow. It's always going to be a part of you. So if you deny it and reject it, it's still going to be there. In fact, when you bring it into the light, that's when you can alchemize the shadow. That's when you can use the light to dissolve the darkness, to alchemize the darkness. That's when we can start to bring awareness. And yes, we're still going to judge at times. It's, you know, these are programs that have been deeply rooted into us and keep us locked in the mind, and we have to start stepping back and moving more and more into soul alignment. The more we move into presence, into soul, into the true self, the more we can see those judgments and we can recognize them, and then we can think, okay, we can look at them with compassion, and we can think, okay, what was that really about? And we don't even need to know what it's about, to be honest. You know, that's a logical mind that thinks we've got to understand everything. We don't need to understand it. We can just recognize that energy, and we can make a choice, a conscious choice, to change that energy, to, instead of using judgment, actually, how can I use understanding? How can I use compassion? How can I put myself in their shoes? Or even for yourself as well, when we're judging the self, because really it does start with judgment of the self, and then we move that judgment, we can project it onto others. So yeah, so hopefully this is bringing that subconscious program well into the conscious. If you're watching this video, then you will be resonating with this in some way. You'll be maybe recognizing this in yourself, recognizing something that perhaps you thought you were not, and you're discovering, actually, it is a part of me, and it's okay. We can have compassion for it, we can see it, and we can start to dissolve it, and we can start to alchemize it, because we've got to bring it out of the shadow in order to do that.